Welcome back to the channel. Today's video I'm going to be going over how to install recessed LED lighting. So started doing some research, finally picked out everything. I got the recessed LED lights, I got some Romex wire and a new dimmer switch to be able to dim them. But let's jump into it. I'll show you a little bit of homework you need to do first before you buy anything. And we'll just go over the whole install process. So going into a space where there's currently no lighting, no wiring run, on how to do that whole process. So let's get started. So the first thing you're going to want to do is measure your room. So I measured mine, just drew a little box. It's just under a 12 foot by 12 foot room. So I measured the length and width and sketched it up here. And if you can see, I already have my 4 light placements and all those measurements done. And all I did was just Googled basically LED recessed light calculator. I clicked on the first one that comes up and this little form comes up, free recessed lighting blog, and it has a built-in calculator. And you can figure out how many lights you want in your space. So for me, this is a den office. I don't need it super bright like a kitchen, so I decided to do 4. So I clicked on the little 4, and then I put in my sizes in inches, so 142 right there, and 138, and then just hit calculate. And then it'll give you this little schematic, which you could screenshot. I just went ahead and transferred it over to here. It's going to work out good too, because my wall switch, so there's my opening and where my existing wall switch is. That switch is 37 inches over. So I'll be able to run the wire up from that switch up into the ceiling to start running it to all my lights. What I already figured out, that blue tape is my stud spacing. So I'm gonna have to cut an access hole to route a wire into the switch box and drill through the top plate to get into my ceiling. A little bit of calculations you need to do first. I did some of these measurements, knew about how many I wanted, and I did all that before I bought anything. So some homework to do for your space. There's also calculators for how many lumens or how much light you should have based on bathroom, living room, what type of room you have, bedroom. Like I said, I don't need a lot. The lights I end up getting are 750 lumens each. So 4 of those is like having four 60 watt incandescent bulbs, which is plenty for a small space that had no lighting in the first place. So yeah, so then I went ahead and went shopping and bought some stuff. I'll show you what I picked out. Team 2 conductor Romex. This is Romex Simple. I picked up a 50-foot roll. I think I'm only going to need about 20 feet. So they sell them in different sizes. I'm sure I'll use more in other projects, so I just picked up a 50-foot roll of that. Depending on the size of your space, depends on how much wire you're going to need. And then I picked up lights. So I went with 4-inch recessed slim LEDs. These had really good, I got all this on Amazon, really good reviews on Amazon. And they come with the junction boxes for wiring them and everything. Picked up a dimmer switch. It's just a decorator style digital smart dimmer, not like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. I don't need any of that. This is like 15 bucks. I'll leave links to the wire, the lights, and this dimmer switch I use. Alright, so I just got those 2 marked up. Now's a good time to double check. I double checked all my measurements. I know it's hard to show up on camera. I can see my pin marks from my crosshairs. I'm like visualizing how the 4 lights are going to look in the space. Everything looks good to me. So let's go ahead and I'll just go ahead and drill the holes for where the lights are first, because that'll show me better. Now these 4-inch lights say to use a 4.25, so a 4 1/4 inch hole saw. I don't have one that big. My biggest one's a 4-inch. But I think what I'm going to do is just use the 4-inch and notch out if I need a little more clearance for these springs to fit up in the ceiling. I think that should work. So let me grab my hole saw. Let's drill these holes. So moving along with the project here, I just removed the cover plate and switch from my outlet box, or the switch box. And I do have an extra hole in the top corner. Just have some scrap Romex here to feed the new wire up to my lights. So that'll go in up there. Alright. And the two black wires I disconnected from the switch, I just went ahead and twisted back together. I labeled the one that was going to that outlet to power it. So I put a little piece of blue tape on it, but with this twisted together, now that outlet's on all the time. So all I'll need to do is grab, power back to my new switch, and then my new wire up to my lights, and then connect neutrals to neutrals, ground to grounds in here. I started cutting access holes. So I like to cut bigger holes. I figure if I'm gonna cut a hole in the wall, I might as well make it useful and I can get tools and get in there and actually do stuff. But essentially all I do here was drywall screw in the center, and then used my oscillating tool over there to zip it out, and then I can pull the panel out, and then when I'm done working, use joint compound to patch the piece I took out back in. So, and then I did the same on the ceiling, and I'll show you kind of what we got going on inside the wall. So in the hole in the ceiling, I have an existing hole where there's actually that wire that's running down there, goes through the top plate and then comes through this first joist. There's a joist really close to the wall. And then over here is this is the back side of where my doorbell is, and it has smaller wires going through a hole there that I can feed the Romex through as well. So I went ahead and drilled a hole there right above that one. I didn't want to try to fight going in that one, but that could have been an option. I could have snaked a wire or tried to go through this joist through there by drilling a new hole in the top plate. But I have two holes here to use, so I'm going to use one of them if I was having to drill a new hole up through. And then I just drilled that hole to try to snake through. So we'll see if we are successful. And I'm just using a 3/4 inch paddle bit to go through the joists to run my wire. So let me play around with this real quick and see if I can't get through that existing hole, through that hole, so I can get over to my first light. I'm not gonna believe this, but I stopped recording and it took me like 20 seconds. I felt it hit my finger and I just shoved the more solid wire all the way through. So now I'll be able to fish this over to my first light hole location. It's all connected. So this can be a pain. I've done stuff like this before and you don't always get this lucky. Sometimes it takes 5-10 minutes to fish stuff. And they make fish tape, fiberglass, flexible. They make tools for this stuff. So, but this is what I have. I don't have that tool, so I'm making it work. Famous last words. I think I said running the wire between the joist bays was easy. Well, I kept getting stuck and I couldn't make it over. So then I stuck my phone up there and looked, and there it is blocking. So I used my stud finder. I can look in these two bays and there's blocking in these two. So I imagine there's ladder style blocking between the joists, and they used full 2x10s. So I can't just push the wire through. So I'm gonna have to cut another access hole to get through this piece of blocking to get over to my next one. And then mapped out the joists here, and I think if I cut off access, I can get into both of these. And then an access here, I can get into both of those to drill holes and feed my wire through. And then I imagine I'll have to cut another access for blocking here. So yeah, you never know what you're gonna run into, just gotta get around it. So I already started patching. I'll show you that in my process real quick. I know that's like an intimidating thing for doing this kind of job, is worrying about cutting holes in the drywall and patching. So I'll go ahead and show you how I'm gonna close this back up. So I'll close this up before I cut any more access holes. And I know I probably mentioned it before, but I like making my holes big enough so they actually work, make it easier to get in here. So I need to drill a hole through this blocking. We'll just go right about there. this all the way through. So you can see the cable, Romex going through the hole I drilled. Got a staple right there. Got my 2 links here cut. But that's the basic process. So I'm not going to bore you with the rest. I'll drill a couple or cut a couple new holes, route, and probably 1 hole for the blocking here. It's probably going to be here, and we'll finish. That'll be my 4th one, and we'll be done. So let me knock that out. All right, I have all my wires routed to all 4 recessed lights. To recap, I had to cut a hole in the wall, so there's one there to get through the top plate. This initial one for that, and to get over to this one, I had to cut a hole here to get through the blocking. I had to get 2 holes here to get to that one, to go through all these joists here, here, and then the same there, and then the one last hole to get through that piece of blocking. So 1, 2, 3, 5 holes in the ceiling for 4 lights. But that's because I had extra blocking. If that blocking wasn't there, running between the joist bays, it could save you a little bit of time. But all my wires are run. I'm gonna go ahead and patch up and put the drywall back on these 3 before I move on. All right, so here is the box. Pretty slim profile too. So it's got 2 knockouts for sending wire in, 1 on each side. These are 3/8 knockouts. Oh, correction. There's a 3rd on the back. I didn't even notice that when I did the other ones. I figured it was easy to do the sides, which it was, so I'll keep doing it. But you do have a 3rd one. And then it opens up, little clips. This is where you do all your wiring on this side. And then this side, you could pop this open, but this is where the electronics are, so to convert AC to DC and control the LED light. And then on the outside here is also your color temperature selector. So you have 5,000, 4,000, 35, 3,000, and 2,700, pretty standard. So I'm keeping 5,000 for my install because I'm gonna have a dimmer. So, and I like the white, bright white light. But you can set the color temperature to whichever one you want. Plus, once it's installed, you can pop these lights out and adjust it at any time. And then it comes with a little bag of quick connectors. Comes with 3 of them. And then the only thing it didn't come with was some kind of bushing, clamp, or grommet for the knockouts. So I did go and purchase a bag of 3/8 knockout grommets from Home Depot. I think it's in plastic or polycarbonate. Yeah, push in, and they hold the cable in place when you push it in, so it doesn't pull back out and keeps it from chafing the metal. But first, since this will be the one I do in the 3rd light position, it'll be 2. I'll need to knock out 2. These are really, you can stick a screwdriver in these to pry them. Or you can just push it in and wiggle it till it comes loose. Pretty straightforward there. So I'll pull the wires out and just wiggle these 2 knockouts on the side loose. And then my little grommets, they just lock into place from the outside. 3/8 is a standard size. There are a few other sizes, but I'll throw one of these on each side. Lock them in place. And then you can go ahead and set up your wiring. So take your quick connector, firmly seat it, give it a little tug, make sure it's tight. On your neutral, hot, and ground. All right, there we go. And then the box is pretty much ready to go wire up. So you have a piece of scrap wire here. So these grommets allow you to push in, and then they capture the wire. So I can't pull that out, and it holds it in place. So shove them in, give you enough slack cut the sheathing back, but make sure the sheathing fully goes in the junction box. Strip your wires, and then, you know, blacks to black, white to white, and the bare coppers go to the green. That's pretty much all the wiring is. So pretty easy to set up. And then you can close it, put it up in the ceiling, and then hook up your light. So this is like keyed. It's got a flat side. So correspond to the correct flat side on there is right there. And it just pushes together, and then this collar comes over and threads on to lock it. And then for installing the light, pretty easy. You just flip both of these clips up, put it up, and then they spring back down to hold your light tight. It does have a plastic cover you'll have to remove to protect the light. So let's go ahead and get these last two installed and wrap this project up. So last light is installed. I left it open just to show you. There's plenty of room for even, this one only has one wire, but the ones that I did two, there's plenty of room. And these connectors, supplied connectors, have 4 slots. So plenty of room to close it in there, close it up, and then you can see your switch there on the side. I will click through some of the colors real quick. So 5,000 for 3,500 I think, and then there's like a 2,700. But I'm leaving mine on 5,000. So there we go. I'm just gonna throw this last one in. I'll secure power before I throw that into the ceiling. And then I just gotta get my switch installed. And I just threw a little bit of primer. So if you remember right above the switch here, it's where I cut my initial access hole to get through the top plate. So after 2 or 3 light coats of joint compound, and I sanded, used my paintbrush to retexture, and then I just used Kill Spray Primer. So that whole light cut's completely gone. I still gotta finish sanding and priming all the holes I cut in the ceiling. But yeah, it's easy to, you know, cover those up when you're done. So let me get the switch in, and then I'll give you my final thoughts on these lights that I used. So also I found it easier to install these if you just put one clip in, and then you only have to worry about bending the one up on the other side. And then make sure that gasket up there seals nicely, and then you can pull your plastic off. Alright, got my dimmer switch on. I just turned the breaker. I'm not putting the cover plate on because I still have to paint in this room, and I gotta finish patching all the holes in the ceiling. But yeah, it's got a little white light. They call it a locator light, so when the light is off, it helps you find the switch in the dark, I guess. And then when you turn it on, that light goes out, that little light on the switch. And then we've got our dimmer slider here. I like this dimmer by Grip. It doesn't make any noise, it's digital. So there's my 4 lights. It's on max brightness. It's got a lot of adjustment, and turn it really low without any flicker. So that's cool. Perfect for what this room is going to be, a little den office. So yeah, that'll wrap up the video. And I will move on with my project of remodeling this room. So, you know, if you have a room that you don't have access to an attic space to run wiring, like on a first floor on a 2-story home, it's a little intrusive. So if you're planning on doing something like this, plan on having spare paint for whatever colors in your room, or do it before you plan on repainting a room. That'd be the perfect time, which I am. I plan to paint all these walls and repaint the ceiling. We actually might color drench it and paint the ceiling, the wall color, we'll see. But I know I really like these. I'll leave, these were in senior LED slim wafer lights, whatever they call them. Super thin. I will note, like in the two you saw me install, there was some of the stud there, and it allows you to mount these because they're so thin where a stud is. But just keep in mind, if your stud's in the center of your hole you drill for your light, you're not going to be able to feed up the electrical junction box. So keep that in mind when you're measuring and marking your studs. If that stud's dead center, you're not going to be able to get that box in there. It's something I didn't think about initially when I drilled my holes, and I'm glad I didn't run into that problem, but something to think about. But yeah, like I said, links in the description to all of them. That'll wrap up this video. Really not a bad project, weekend job. Really happy with it. Got lighting in this room. I think the 4 lights for this 12 by 12 room, 750 lumen each, is plenty. So, you know, plan accordingly or do as many lights as you want. But these things put out a lot of light, and I got these for like $4 or $5 a light, which I think is a steal. So really happy with it. All right, that's it. This one. I'll probably do a couple more videos on some of the more details, but I'll try to put as much footage as I shot into this one for the whole install process. All right, thanks for watching.